Today we'll look at how we can cultivate joy and happiness. And this retreat for teachers and many of our retreats that Thai teaches that we offer in our different practice centers are structured more or less around the sutra on the full awareness of breathing, the Anapanasati Sutra. And in this sutra, the Buddha offers us 16 exercises for calming our body first. The first 4 have to do with awareness of our breathing and awareness of our body, calming our body. That was what Sister Gina spoke about yesterday. And then the 5th and 6th exercises are being in touch with joy and happiness. So the first 4 are about the body, and the second 4 have to do with the feelings. And whenever we speak about joy and happiness, we're speaking at the same time about suffering and difficulties, because they they go together. And it's possible to experience happiness, to touch joy even in the midst of great difficulties. And our community, having a community of practice, is a very important refuge that helps us in times of difficulty. There's a very beautiful image that Thai offers us, that our suffering is like a rock, and if we throw this rock in the river, the rock sinks straight away to the bottom. But if we have a practice, then we have a boat, and we can put that suffering, those rocks of suffering, on our boat, and our boat won't sink, even with a lot of suffering, with a lot of rocks on the boat. So the boat is our own practice of mindfulness, and it's also our collective practice with a community of practitioners, of other people going in the same direction that we want to go in. So even if we have a lot of suffering and a lot of confusion and anxiety and stress, if we know how to take refuge in our practice and to take refuge in our community, then we can also experience joy and happiness, even while the suffering is still there. So we tend to think that our suffering has to disappear, to go away completely in order for us to be happy. But our suffering also has a very important role to play in teaching us how to be happy. And in my experience, it's actually it's when I'm able to really just be with my suffering and to hold it and to understand it, that's what becomes my happiness, my deep joy. It's not by going around my pain that I will find happiness, but really going through it and accepting it. So in many teachings, the Buddha said that it's possible to be happy right in the present moment. And I thought we could put this to the test together and see if right now, in this moment, we can think of what are some conditions for happiness that exist right now, that we don't have to go somewhere else to find, that we don't have to wait until we have our degree, or until we have this house or this car or this trip or whatever it is to be happy. So I'm gonna write what you say on the board. What are some things that are a condition for happiness right now? Yes? Warm feet, yes. Yes? A smile. Yes? Us being together. Shelter from the rain. It's good to do this exercise on a rainy day. Être dans la nature. Is that right? Sorry, could you raise your hand so I can hear? Yes? Feel ourselves alive. Feel alive. Yes.
Being totally present.
Being totally present. Yes? Avoir bien mangé. I'm sorry about my French spelling. Yes? Yes?
Feeling the rain.
Feeling the rain? Okay. Yes? Paix et l'harmonie pour les enfants? Pour les enfants ici? Oh, dedans. Ok. That peace and harmony for the children inside. That's what she said, I think. Yes.
Being in a wonderful place.
Being in a wonderful place. Yes. Receiving the Dharma rain. Okay. Dharma rain. Yes?
It's similar to the other, but present to the unchanging.
Present to the unchanging. Yes?
My relationships with everything.
So feeling connected to everything? Something like that? Okay. Yes.
Seeing colors and shapes.
Seeing colors and shapes. So we can see, right?
Sisterhood and brotherhood.
Sisterhood and brotherhood. Okay, one more in the back, yes? Yes? Of what? Yes. So we get to have Thai, having our teacher. Thank you. There's so many more, right? So maybe we can say the Buddha is right. It is possible to be happy in the present moment. And the more we do this, the more things we see. And it's really important to take time to look at what our conditions are for happiness right in the present moment. Because our happiness is the best, most important gift we can offer other people, our students, our children, our family. So, I think to be a spiritual practitioner, it's to become more and more skilled, more and more creative at being happy. And there's a very nice quote from Arnaud Desjardins. I'm sorry, I don't have it from the original in French. But he says, "Terrible or not, difficult or not, the only thing that is beautiful, noble, religious, and mystical is to be happy." So when I first came to Plum Village, I was 22, 23, and I had recently graduated from college, and I came here for the summer retreat. It was in 1997. And I remember feeling immediately at home and feeling like this was the first time I had been around so many people who seemed truly happy to me. Not just Thai, but the community. And I came to Plum Village because I realized I had missed out on some important things in my education. And I always loved school, and I was a good student. But as I was finishing university, I realized I didn't know how to be happy, or how to take care of my suffering, especially. I went to hear at my university a teacher named Ram Das. He came and spoke, and he was sharing about how important it is to learn how to be happy. And I was considering going on to do a PhD and kind of follow in the footsteps of the professors that inspired me, and I just thought, I don't know if they're really happy. I respect them a lot, and they're very well accomplished in their field as academics. But I felt there was really something missing, and so when I came to Plum Village, well, before I came to Plum Village, I knew I needed to find a teacher. That was really clear as I was finishing up and thinking about what to do with my life, which would be the first time I would not be in school. And I just thought very clearly I need to find a teacher and a community. And so when I came here, I found that I was also happier than I had ever been before, and I considered myself to be a pretty happy person already. I mean, cheerful at least. But I had a lot of suffering also that I didn't know how to take care of, and a lot of it I didn't even know I had until I started to practice. So that month, I cried a lot. Like almost every Dharma discussion, I felt I was in tears, and I looked around, and also a lot of other people were crying too. And it's funny that I found this place to be the place where people were happiest, but it was also the place where a lot of people were crying. But it was because we could cry, because we were taught through the teachings and through the community, through the practices, how to be in the present moment, how to notice what was coming up and be there for it. That suffering could begin to emerge, and then our healing could really happen. And so we were learning to be present for our own suffering and also for the suffering of others. And so Thai shares with us that joy and happiness can only be found or seen against the background of our suffering. So it's really because we, for instance, if we've lived in a country that's been at war, then we really can treasure peace when our country's at peace. If we've experienced hunger, then we can really treasure having a good breakfast, like someone said just now. So there's a beautiful series of short clips on YouTube called Children Full of Life. I don't know if some of you have seen it, but it's a little documentary of this Japanese teacher. He's a 4th grade teacher. His name is Toshiro Kanemaru, if I got it right. And the goal of their class is to learn to live a happy life and care for other people. And he has the children write in their notebooks every day, write about what their real experience is in their life, their difficulties, their irritation, their sadness, their conflicts, also their happiness, whatever they feel, they write in their notebooks. And every day, 3 children stand up in front of class and read their notebook. And it's a very beautiful story of these children coming up and sharing quite profound suffering of their grandmother or father having passed away. That because the atmosphere in the class is so safe, because everyone does this sharing of their heart, they're able to speak out what's really happening for them. And so the little documentary shows one boy reading about the death of his grandmother, and then that allows another girl whose father passed away when she was 3. And she had never talked about it. It was a secret because she wanted to be like everyone else and to fit in. But the telling of that story gave her the courage to also share about the death of her father. And well, I don't want to spoil the video for you, but like the whole class is crying when she shares this story, and it's such a moment of healing for the girl to release this burden that she's felt has made her different all the time, and then she actually feels more a part of the class than ever before because she's able to really to tell that story. So what I think was so healing for me and continues to be, and I think for many people who practice with other people, is this the space to be who we are, to not have to try to be something we think others want us to be, or try to be someone we think we should be, but really to just be who we are, whatever it looks like, pretty or not so pretty. So part of really being able to be happy is to really be able to suffer, to know what our suffering is, and to accept it and to welcome it, that it really has a place. It's not some mistake, it's not some misfortune that shouldn't be there. When I first became a novice, so as an aspirant I lived with the lay people, and I was very, very happy and very much looking forward to becoming a nun. And then when I became a nun, I moved in to live with the sisters. And then things kind of tightened around me somehow in my mind. Like if I had a conflict with a sister or wasn't so at ease with a sister, I saw I could never get away from her. Like I would always see her in the bathroom or in the dining hall or in the kitchen. And I realized I was suffering a lot in my first 2 months as a novice. I was thinking, wait a minute, I thought I was going to become like the saint when I ordained, and everything would become beautiful and filled with light, and I'm like suffering more than before. Something's wrong with this picture. But then after 2 months, I realized, no, wait a minute, this is exactly what's supposed to happen. The things that I don't like about myself, or the things that are really difficult, that's what's supposed to come up. Because otherwise, how can I heal it? How can I transform it? Doesn't mean it's easy, even now, to keep seeing my difficulties. there's a poem about this that I want to read to you. So at Christmas we like to give each other gifts, but I guess some people also like to give poems. So this was one that was circulating at Christmas that I like. It's called Kindness. It's by Naomi Shihab Nye, N-Y-E. I don't know how to pronounce it. Nye. So, kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows, and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. So, in the Buddha's teachings on the Noble Eightfold Path, one of the aspects of the path is right diligence or right effort. Because, well, in all of the 8 practices, you can do them wrong. So you can have wrong effort, wrong diligence, in which you put a lot of pressure on yourself or stress yourself out, or you're diligent maybe for a reason that's not so helpful, or with an intention that's not so skillful. So there are 4 ways to practice right diligence. And they have to do with our happiness and our joy, how we can cultivate them. And the first element of right effort is, if a positive seed has not manifested yet in our mind, to help it come up. So to actively practice to water our joy and our happiness. The second aspect of right effort is, once a positive seed has come up, to keep it there. It's very nice. It's like you want to stay warm, and so you build a fire, and don't let the fire go out. And keep feeding the fire so you can stay warm. A third aspect of right effort is when a negative feeling or experience is not in your mind yet, don't let it come up. Do your best not to water the negative things in yourself, in others. And the last practice is, if a seed of suffering, if a negative feeling has arisen, then take care of it and help it to go back down. So don't make it bigger. So I really like this teaching, and I think it's something that we can all reflect on, because we know that in order to touch real happiness and joy, we have to really touch our suffering. But it's also the case that in order to take care of our suffering, we need to have a healthy muscle of happiness and joy in our mind. So we need to have a balance. So the two inter-are in both directions. So to care for our suffering, we also really need to care for our happiness and our joy. So, how can we bring up the positive seeds in us when they're not yet manifesting, when they're not in our mind yet? Someone mentioned smiling as a condition for happiness on the board. So smiling is a practice. Maybe we think that we need to feel joyful in order to smile. But we can also smile before we feel joyful. Smiling relaxes some 300 muscles in our face, and that often triggers naturally a feeling of well-being. There's a lovely quote from Thai. He says, "Sometimes your joy is the source of your smile, but sometimes your smile can also be the source of your joy." So it's maybe a good idea also to reflect for ourselves what are the ways we can bring up joy in our life, and to really become a scientist of ourselves. What makes me happy? There was a man who came to Plum Village who wanted to write a book about Thai's life. And Thai said, write a book about your own life. And I think an important chapter in this book that each of us might write is what makes me happy? What can I do to bring up happiness? Another chapter would be, what can I do to be there for my suffering, to take care of my suffering? So this Christmas was a very special Christmas. Some of us had the joy to practice together some songs in 4-part harmony, some Christmas carols. And spontaneously, a few nights before Christmas, someone said, hey, we should go and carol, sing for our neighbors and offer them some of these songs we've been practicing. So we all got out with our candles, and the brothers had a van, the sisters had a van, and we went to our neighbor over there, that house, first, and then to a couple more neighbors. But we had never done this before, and I don't think our neighbors had ever received any caroling singers at 9 p.m. in the evening at their house before either. So we stood at the door of this neighbor's, and after singing 2 verses of a song, the husband said, "Thank you very much. That's wonderful." And we were like, "Oh wait, we still have more to sing you." So the wife was like, "Yes, please continue." So we continued, and then the man left. He went out of the living room, and he came back, and he was crying. And he had to leave again as we sang another song and come back. And he just stood there crying as we sang. And he said, "I'm so sorry, but it just really moves me to see you all singing like this. It's so special." And we felt it too, standing there. We all just had our candles and our sheets. And it was really a holy moment of just spontaneous offering. And as we drove out the road, the 2 of them were in their doorway going like this. It was very touching. I think some of us couldn't sing also because we were so moved. We also cried. Anyway, that was a very beautiful experience of watering joy. And it was now I have a new item to add to my list of how I can bring myself joy and others, is to go caroling. Because when we can bring others happiness, it's bringing ourselves happiness too, because we're not separate from others. Another practice that I've found very helpful is to express gratitude. If I can just stop, especially when I'm not feeling so happy, and just ask myself, what am I grateful for right now? And that also is a muscle that we can strengthen the more we practice to be aware of our gratitude. And there's a lovely line in one of the chants that we recite here. It says, "With gratitude in our hearts, we don't suffer." So for a month period, and I do this practice from time to time, but I remember once I decided to keep a gratitude journal and write down at the end of each day what I was grateful for. And I invited my mom to do this with me. So we wrote down and then sent it to each other after 1 month what our gratitude was. And watered a lot of joy in both of us. There's also a practice of writing love letters to those we are close to express our gratitude to them. And so when my dad turned 68, I decided I would try to write down 68 things I was grateful to him for. And I thought, that's a lot of things, and I didn't know if I would make it. Although he's a wonderful dad, but I just thought, wow, 68's a lot. But I started to write, and I just began to think of things that I had never been aware of that he did for me, that I really, really appreciated, and that I'd never expressed to him before. And one memory would trigger another memory and another, and it was like a snowball. And pretty soon I think I had 90 or way over 68 thank yous. And I offered the letter to him on his birthday, and he told me he takes it with him wherever he goes. When he doesn't feel so good about himself, he takes it out and he reads it. So I read you a few of the things I wrote to him. So, thank you, Dad, for changing me and my brother's diapers countless times. Thank you for standing up for what you felt was right and joining the civil rights movement in the 60s and putting yourself in danger. Thank you for surprising me and my brother by bringing my mom to spend Thanksgiving with us one year. My parents divorced when I was young, but they were able to maintain a good friendship. And so one year he brought my mom to have Thanksgiving with us as a surprise. Thank you for listening deeply to many, many people who need support and care in your counseling work and in your everyday life. Thank you for turning around in your car to go pick up a hitchhiker who had given you the finger. I don't know how to translate this in French, but we say giving the finger, it's an obscene gesture. So my father was driving and there was a man who wanted a ride, and my father passed him by, and as he passed him, the man made an obscene gesture. And then my father said, oh, okay, I go back and pick him up. Thank you for coming so often to visit me at the monastery and being a great friend and father on the path of practice. Thank you for fixing delicious tomato soup for me as a child whenever I would get sick. Thank you for talking with me compassionately and openly instead of yelling at me when I lied to you as a teenager. Thank you for saying sorry when you make mistakes. Thank you for doing my hair when I was young. Thank you for setting limits and saying no to me when I needed that. So, so I enjoyed this practice a lot, and I decided to do it again for my mom when she turned 68. And then I did it for my brother, and I noticed when my brother turned 40, my dad did it for my brother and sent me the email, this beautiful list of 40 things he was grateful for. And I've shared this practice with people, and they tell me that it really works, it really helps them. A woman in Italy said she wrote such a letter for her husband on his 50th or 60th birthday. She said it really shifted things in their relationship. And there's a sister also who shared with me that she wrote such a letter for her father when he had a significant birthday. And her father was deeply moved and said to her, I've been waiting for this for my whole life. For someone to see all these things and appreciate all these things in me. So this is also a practice we can do with children. There's a teacher here who gave me permission to share this story of hers. It's something she does halfway through the year in her class. She gives all the students a piece of paper with the name of every student down the left column, and they just write one sentence of what they appreciate about every other student in the class. And then she collects that and cuts them and puts all the things about, for instance, Tom on one page. So Tom gets a list of 25 things people in the class like about him. And every student gets that, and the teacher gets it as well. And this teacher, I just have to say her name is Kati. She's right there. She's from Germany. This story is in the book, Planting Seeds, about sharing mindfulness with children. Anyway, she says that the whole atmosphere in the class changes after this exchange of appreciation and gratitude, that there's more openness, more connection, more safety. And we also do a similar version in our children's program, especially with younger children. We give all the children a big sheet of paper with a flower that has a little circle in the middle, and they each write their name in the middle of the circle. And then we pass all the papers, each one passes their paper to the person to their right. And the next child writes or draws something that's nice about that child until it gets all the way around the circle, and they have all their petals are filled with something that the other children appreciate in them. So when we talk about ethics, I think this is a really ethical exercise. It's a real ethical education to teach children to be grateful and to appreciate what they see in the people around them. To be kind. There's a well-known philosopher and writer, Aldous Huxley, and at the end of his life, he was asked, what advice do you have to give us, And he just said something very simple. He said, be more kind. We can all really just be kind. So this is something that we can water in ourselves, and we can water in others, and especially children. It's not difficult to water the seed in children. I think it's very natural for children. And Sister Gina yesterday was sharing about, and she asked us to close our eyes and to picture a teacher in our life, someone who had taught us at school, or who had been some kind of teacher to us, and just to picture what kind of energy they emitted to us. And I think we can all probably say that we wouldn't be who we are today if it hadn't been for certain teachers that we had come across in our life. this is one of the 4 gratitudes. Whenever we have a ceremony in our tradition, especially to receive any mindfulness trainings, any commitments that we wish to make, we always practice bowing to 4 things. And one is to our parents, to express gratitude to our parents. One is to express gratitude to our teachers. One is to express gratitude to our friends who have helped us on the path. And the 4th is to all beings. And it's also a gatha, a little poem that we also recite at the end of our meal. Maybe you've seen some people when they finish their meal, they take a moment to reflect and bow. And what we're practicing when we do that is the gatha that says, "This meal is finished and I am satisfied. The 4 gratitudes to parents, teachers, friends, and all beings are deeply in my mind." So perhaps, taking time also in this week where we look at education and teaching to reflect on what teachers are we grateful for in our life. So another important practice for bringing up the seeds, the positive seeds in us, is to be aware of our feelings. So Brother Phap Niem gave the orientation when you arrived on Thursday night, and he spoke about the 5 elements or 5 aggregates that make up who we are. And just write them on the board. So we call them the 5 skandhas, or the 5 aggregates. And one is form, or our body. Another is our feelings, our perceptions, our mental formations, so things like our anger, or our loving kindness, or our generosity. And then the last element is our consciousness. So in the realm of feelings, we speak about 4 kinds of feelings. So they're pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, neutral feelings, and mixed feelings. So a neutral feeling is like neither particularly pleasant or unpleasant. And a mixed feeling is both. Like if you have a backache and you get a massage, it's painful, but it's also pleasant because it's releasing the stiffness. So the important thing about this teaching is that most of the time we have a neutral feeling because we aren't very mindful of all the things that we can enjoy. So most of our life is in a neutral state. So our teacher gives this example very often of when we have a toothache and it's so painful and we just can't wait until we can get to the dentist to get our toothache treated, our tooth treated. And so when our toothache is relieved, we feel great happiness. But most of the time we don't have a toothache. But most of the time we're not aware of the joy of a non-toothache. And we're not aware of the joy of a non-stomachache or a non-headache. So we have to be careful with our neutral feelings because they can easily become unpleasant feelings because of how our thinking works. Nothing's particularly wrong, but then we start a process of thinking, and then suddenly we're angry at this person, or we're remembering this difficulty, or we're worrying about this thing in the future. So our neutral feeling has become suffering. But if we are active in our daily life, we can be aware of when we're just feeling so-so and realize, hey, I'm not having a toothache. I don't have a cough. I can breathe in through both my nostrils. My nose is not stuffed up. You know? There's so many conditions for happiness. So there's a very nice practice that Sister Annabelle, a sister who's now in the European Institute of Applied Buddhism in Germany, she encourages us to stop regularly throughout the day and ask ourselves, what am I feeling? What kind of feeling am I having right now? Am I experiencing a pleasant feeling, an unpleasant feeling, a neutral feeling, a mixed feeling? And she also encourages us to ask each other, what are you feeling right now? To help us get out of our habit of kind of taking things for granted and thinking, staying in this neutral place. So I just recently found this quote from Dostoevsky, from his book, The Possessed. He says, "Man is unhappy because he doesn't know he's happy. It's only that. That's all, that's all. If anyone finds out, he'll become happy at once, that minute. It's all good. I discovered it all of a sudden." So I like to invite us now to all practice watering our seeds of joy, and to take a few minutes. I hope maybe you brought something to write with, but I want to ask us all to write for maybe 3 to 5 minutes about something beautiful, wonderful, joyful that happened to you recently, in the last week, in the last month. Something that was really a nice moment for you. And if you don't have a paper or pen, that's okay. You could just maybe sit with your eyes closed and try to remember that experience in as much detail as you can, to really see it in your mind and be in touch with all the things that made it such a beautiful moment for you. So we'll maybe have a sound of the bell, and in a few minutes we'll have another sound of the bell to end that practice. So I hope, it seems like everybody is able to write about something. Yeah. You can continue if you like later. So I wanted us to practice the second aspect of right diligence, which is when something positive has arisen, to keep it there. And that one of the ways I do that is by sharing my happiness with others. That's a way to keep it longer. So unfortunately we don't have time, but I had thought maybe we could get into groups of 3 and read to each other what we wrote just now. But perhaps in this week we'll find a moment to share with others our moment of happiness, to keep the seed in our mind longer. So there are many things that give rise to our joy and our happiness. And one of them is, as was also mentioned here, is to be aware of our connection, our interdependence with others. And we've heard already about how we can do this when we eat, and this is also something that children love to do. When we share mindfulness with children and teach them to look deeply into their food. In a retreat with children, we always have snack meditation in the morning. So we have a special way of passing around the food, and everyone bows and takes a piece of apple or some raisins and waits till everyone has a snack before we all begin to eat together. And then we eat a few minutes in silence or relative silence. Sometimes they can be quite silent, actually. It's just a very beautiful silence that doesn't need to be enforced. When the kids feel for themselves, oh, this is nice, and they contribute to it. But I poll the children at the end of the retreat. I like to ask them, what did you like the most in the children's program? And a lot of them say, snack meditation. So I wanted to share with you a few, 2 quotes from some 9th graders in India at the American Embassy School in Delhi. There's a teacher who used to teach there, Meena, and she shared with them the practice of orange meditation after reading to them from Thay's book about interbeing, and asked them to look deeply into their orange. And so these 2 boys wrote this reflection. So one's name is Yeonju. He says, "At first I wasn't exactly sure why we were to put so much thought into just an orange. Plainly, there were the orange pickers, the farmers, and the market owners selling the oranges. However, when reminded of Thay's poem that we read in class about how, in order for this paper to be made, rain had to fall for the tree to grow, I was then able to concentrate on the deep meaning of the activity, which was to get out of the trance of thinking." Wow, a 9th grader. "To get out of the trance of thinking that the orange is a simple matter that should have been in my hands without the effort and natural process of 1,000 events. Before the orange pickers, or even the farmers who planted the orange tree, the earth had to exist. It may sound like an exaggeration to think about prehistoric times just for an orange to have happened, but like all humans, the current existence of you and me took just as much time. In conclusion, I learned that we shouldn't take things for granted, but actually think about how they come to be and how much effort and time was put into just one simple thing. And I learned to be thankful, thoughtful, and simply more aware of my surroundings." And another boy, Akash, writes, "When we eat food at home, we don't think of what people went through just so we could enjoy our food. When we started eating the orange, I was actually thinking about what people did, and for the first time in my life, I felt as though I was thanking people I didn't even know. This helped me realize how fortunate I am. It also made me think about how everything we eat and drink starts off as such a little thing, and how we are dependent on other people in order to get our supply of food." So there's so many things in our life like that that we usually take for granted. And I was reading a book recently where the author suggested that we could write a thank you letter every day. That every day there's somebody we could write a little thank you note to or say thank you to in our daily interactions. And to sometimes just play a game, on our own or with our students, with our friends, whoever we're with, to take one thing in our environment and just look together, what are all the things that are in that? So this stand up here, the mother of the forest, of the woodcutter who cut down the wood, who took it to the factory, and who the people who made it into this piece of furniture. So, and the people who grew the food for that mother of the woodcutter to eat. I mean, things like that, to just try to go back as far as we can, or as many different directions as we can, to see how we're all connected. It's a way of watering our happiness. So, and the last thing I'll share is also just this, the way that our happiness is born from letting go. That's a very important source of joy. Is that when we are able to release things, especially ideas, maybe exactly the ideas we have about our happiness, or what blocks our real happiness. Learning to accept things as they are. To just be with reality as it is. So that's a definition of suffering. Suffering is when we don't accept things as they are. So letting go, we are able to be with what is. And we have some of us in Germany, one year at the beginning of Lent, we decided to practice giving up things for Lent. So some gave up sugar for the 40 days before Easter. So I said, okay, I would try to give up complaining for Lent. Well, I wasn't totally successful, but I was very aware whenever I was complaining, because I had made that sort of commitment to try not to complain. So that's a way of practicing letting go. Is to say yes to things, to affirm the people around us, to affirm ourselves. And so something I invited people to do in a course I was teaching recently was to pick one person and for a whole day just affirm that person. To say yes, to give up our preferences, and just cede to that other person, to let them be in the spotlight, give them all of our support and encouragement, and just see what happens when you do that for a day. Just focus on one person. Or just to practice in general for one day, just to say yes to whatever comes, to not give any resistance or any of our own preferences. So this is a very crucial practice, living in community, this letting go and this accepting, especially other people the way they are. And I know I've created a lot of suffering for myself, wanting people to be other than they are. And I had a moment once in Germany where I found myself complaining about a sister in my mind because she was doing something I found irritating that she would often do. And then I just stopped and I asked myself, would I be happy if she stopped doing this? And I realized straight away I would just find something else that she did to be irritated at. I saw it very clearly, and so I could really let go of that irritation of what she was doing and accept, because we can get into these habits of thinking, one negative thing and another negative thing. Anyway, I see that in our relationships, our happiness is really about us and not about other people around us. And the brothers who will share about relationships will share more about this later. But I feel that I have a lot more happiness in relationships that I found very difficult. I used to think if I could only just get away from this person, I will be happy. And then that person did actually leave. And then I suffered even more. There were other people there that I found caused me even more suffering. So it's not the other person. I'm learning that, maybe slowly, but I'm learning. So letting go of our idea of what will bring us happiness, letting go of what we feel other people need to be like, letting go of what we feel we need to be like, accepting what is, accepting ourselves the way we are, accepting others the way they are, helps a lot to live in harmony with others. So I would like to say thank you very much for listening, and I wish we had time to do a dance together, but I think we don't. It was something I wanted to end with in Sister Gina's tradition of ending with something active. Yeah, my brother says you have to practice letting go. My brothers tease me that it's impossible for me to be in a retreat without doing a circle dance. So we'll just have to wait till the tea meditation at the end of the retreat. So thank you. Let us enjoy listening to 3 sounds of the bell.